What in the 20s is going
in the
on?
20s?
Think about
Yes, the 20s, baby.
Plenty. What in the 20s is going on? 20s, baby. This is the 20s.
Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Zama Mkize, and this is What's in the 20s, a podcast where you listen to me grow through its baby. I feel like I want to do a little more shimmy. Feeling good. I'm feeling very, ooh. On today's episode, we're going to be speaking about why you should do hard things. Why don't we do hard things? Well, to keep it plain and simple, because it's hard. Because it's actually it's actually difficult, you know. It is difficult to do hard things, and so we choose not to. I think that is the easiest way we could get into it. But I guess in a little bit more detail, a little bit more examples. Let's start with laziness, right? Laziness keeps us from doing hard things because it requires energy from us. It requires us to apply ourselves. It requires us to stretch ourselves, expand ourselves up, like challenge ourselves and all of that kind of stuff. And so in that way, we feel so like, it's already exhausting to think about. We don't even want to feel, tired by the end of an experience and stuff like that. And so because we're so lazy to move, we're so lazy to think, we're so lazy to be challenged and all of that kind of stuff, we don't do hard things. Another reason is because we're complacent. We're satisfied. We're content with where things are at this moment and stuff like that. So why should I do that? Why should I make the harder choice? I'm satisfied with the way I'm content, with the way that my life is right now. I'm content with the way just everything is flowing and all of that kind of stuff. Why should I want more? Why should I push for better? Why should I push to get things right and all of that kind of stuff? Like, it's fine. Like, let's just put it aside. We roll our eyes, we shrug our shoulders. It just kind of feels like you're too content and too comfortable with where you're at right now that it feels ridiculous to consider the change for something else and all of that kind of stuff. I think that we are impatient, and because we are impatient, we would not choose the harder thing, which is to wait. It is hard to wait. It is hard to sit your turn. It is hard to wait your turn, and to sit something out and to just kind of do the long run of something, all of that kind of stuff. And so because we're impatient, we don't want to do the hard thing. We don't want to make the hard choice, to have the comfortable conversation, because there's a lot of discomfort in it and stuff like that. And so it just kind of feels like an inconvenience to us. The reason why we don't want to do hard things is because we lack support. Maybe it's support from the people around you cheering you on. Maybe it's financial support and all that kind of stuff. When we don't feel like we are being supported enough on something that we want, that we need, that little boost, we kind of feel like, why should I do the hard thing? It's too hard. Back to my first point, I'm like, doing the hard thing is hard. And so if you're not being supported to go through it, to push through and all of that kind of stuff, it kind of feels draining. It feels so draining constantly having to be the person that does the hard thing, especially without support, and if you're carrying it on your own. Another reason why I feel like we do not want to go towards doing the hard thing is because of familiarity. So the point that I made earlier about comfort breeds complacency. And so because we would rather keep what's familiar, we resist change. I struggle with change. I can't handle if change happens quickly. I like my change to happen very slow and sturdy and gradually and all of that kind of stuff. But that's something that I'm, trying to learn to do, is to adapt quickly, because it's such an important skill to have. When changes happen, when you're under pressure, when you have to move a different avenue, I want to learn the skill of just moving with it. I want to learn the skill of adapting with it, because that's the only way we survive, right? Survival of the fittest. Is everything else is left to die and just, move away. But like, we need to be the ones that keep moving with time, moving with evolution and all of that kind of stuff. And so because I constantly resist change, like, it's just so like, it feels so disorienting, And the reason why it feels disorienting for me is because I'm someone who plans a lot, right? I believe in a system. I believe in a way things should be done. Like, I know I preempt things, because I planned for it. I'm a very organized person. And so when changes happen and stuff, because it's so unfamiliar to me, it feels like you are shaking something in me. And it's very frustrating for me to have to, to accept that and deal with that. It makes me feel so upset. Like, how dare you ruin my plan? How dare you mess up something, a perfectly, systemized way of doing something. And that's been something over the years I've been working really, really hard to not be mad about, to stop complaining about, and just keep going and just keep moving. Do the hard thing, reroute, regroup, pivot, make a new plan and all of that kind of stuff. And I think don't get stuck in the fact that it's unfamiliar to you, move with it and figure yourself out. You figure things out on the job. That's the truth about a lot of life, is that we try to prepare for everything all the time. We try to come in ready for any circumstance, whatever it is. But a lot of the things we just have to learn on the job. A lot of the things in life, we just kind of equip ourselves whilst we're already in it. We first have to get in the game and all of that kind of stuff. I think another reason why we don't do the hard thing is because of self-confidence. Maybe our self-esteem and self-image and all that kind of stuff is too low, and so we don't feel like we have what it takes to carry out the hard thing. We don't feel like we can do it, that we can overcome it and all of that kind of stuff. And so if we don't have that self-belief that we can, we won't, and it's such a crippling place to be when you don't see yourself as able. It's such a crippling place to be when you don't see yourself as someone who can succeed at this difficult task presented at them. And I think another reason why we don't do the hard thing is because of a lack of experience. If we're constantly rejecting hard things, we don't have a thing, from our past. We don't have evidence that we can do hard things. We don't have records that prove that we are capable of doing hard things. And so if you keep saying no to the harder choice, the harder conversation, the harder route, it's always going to feel difficult when hard things come, and we're always going to reject it. We're always going to, move in the opposite direction of it. And it sucks. Oh my goodness. It sucks not having that self-belief, not having that track record that you've survived difficult things, that you've overcome difficult things, that you've, grown through. We miss our teaching moment, to grow, to be better, to evolve when we constantly evolve doing hard things. And I think that if we don't want something bad enough, like when you really want something, we won't do the hard thing. And you wonder, why am I still struggling at this thing and stuff? You have to ask yourself, do I want it bad enough? And I think sometimes holding yourself accountable is realizing, damn, I just don't want it bad enough. And that's why I'm not willing to submerge myself in everything that it's going to take out of me to get to where I want, to get to this thing that I am setting out for and stuff. I think if you have to ask yourself the question, why should I do this hard thing? First and foremost is because it expands your tolerance for discomfort. So every single time when you're in a place where it feels, again, as I said, having an uncomfortable conversation with somebody, you have to be able to do those things, because you can't progress in a relationship. You can't progress in a workplace and all of that kind of stuff with anything if you're constantly avoiding difficult conversations, if you're constantly avoiding doing the hard thing. And so if we hate discomfort so much, it's going to be so difficult for us to get to where we want to be. So I heard an example, and I think it's so brilliant. When you set out for something, immediately the first thing it's going to be is hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of discomfort. So if you're saying, I want to now change my diets and stuff like that, of course, it's first going to suck. It's going to suck for a while, because you're not used to eating a certain type of way and all of that kind of stuff. And you're going to have cravings. You're going to, want to fall back and all of that kind of stuff. And on the other side of it is you succeeding. So if you think about it as a graph, you're first going to dip. Your dopamine is going to dip, your energy, your mood. You're not going to be excited for a while because it's hard. If you want to be consistent at the gym, it's first going to suck because you first have to build the discipline and the endurance and the discipline. It's uncomfortable putting yourself in that situation, in that place where you have to show up and stuff. So obviously, first, you're going to feel like you're being hit with the rock because it's hard. If you want to try out entrepreneurship, freelancing, all of that kind of stuff, the discomfort of not knowing when your next paycheck is coming, the discomfort of not knowing how much is coming next, the discomfort of not knowing, if you're going to get another client and all that, you have to sit in it and work through it. But if you do not have a tolerance for it, you're always going to avoid it and move in the opposite direction. And so when I say you need to keep doing the hard thing and choosing the hard thing, is because now we're building our tolerance for discomfort so that when discomfort comes, we don't go in the opposite direction. When discomfort comes, we don't quit. We don't let go. We don't give up. We don't just kind of abandon the project altogether. We kind of have the endurance and the stamina to withstand the period of it sucking for a bit. And it's going to suck. And it might even suck a little bit more. You might get injuries on the way. You might acquire losses, loss of money, loss of people in your life, loss of friendships and relationships and all of that kind of stuff. And it might just feel like you're getting more and more into a darker place. And then something happens when it curves, when it, just spikes up, because everything that was weighing you down releases from you. And now you have more momentum, more speed to go further than where you started, And that's why we have to choose the hard thing, because we have to prepare ourselves for when it's going to suck, I think that it will make choosing the harder thing helps us build determination and resilience. And by that is because we've done this over and over and over, now we know what it's like to persevere. We know what it's like to push forward, and we're building that thing inside of us that tells us keep going, that tells us to keep pushing, to do one more and all of that kind of stuff. That resilience, that even when unfavorable circumstances come, we will still champion through. We will still find the courage and the strength to dig deep and move forward. And that's what choosing the harder thing does for you, is that it pushes you to search inside yourself in places where you've never searched before, to dig out something out of you that you never thought laid within you. You know what I'm saying? This feeling of like, have you ever accomplished something and thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to give you an example. Last week, I completed a Sudoku puzzle, one of the most difficult ones I've ever done. And I cannot tell you the way I felt at the end of it. I wanted to give up so many times. It was driving me insane. I kept having to erase numbers and go back and track back and start again and start again. It was actually the most insane thing I had put my brain through in a minute, When I completed it, I almost started crying. I could not believe that satisfaction, because what I did was I worked out a system. I started thinking smarter. I started knowing the layouts. I started understanding this number can't go here and this, that feeling of being smarter, that feeling of applying yourself and all of that. That's what I'm talking about. That is skill. That is perseverance. I know I'm speaking about something as simple as a Sudoku puzzle, but I mean, that's life. Life is filled with puzzles that we need to solve, equations that we need to solve for, and all of that kind of stuff. And you have to have the determination that I can do it, even if it means going again and again and checking where you made a mistake. Because the thing about Sudoku is that you could feel like you're getting ahead and ahead and ahead until you're in that last box and it's not adding up. Until you're in that last row and the numbers aren't adding up, which means somewhere, you don't even know where, but somewhere back, the numbers are wrong and you have to go back. And it's insane because you can't even figure out where. You have to just go through every single box all over again to figure out where did I go wrong, And that's what I mean. Like, that's how it is with life. We need to, go through everything in ourselves, in our character, in our decision making, in the people who are around us and stuff like that, and evaluate what is working and what isn't. And that is doing the hard thing. And as I said earlier, the things that we want are on the other side of things getting worse, of things feeling worse, that dip of like, I'm struggling and it is painful and I have bruises and I've got a headache from thinking too much, from planning too much, from redoing, all that kind of stuff. The thing you are looking for, the thing that you're striving for is literally sitting here on the other side of that struggle, of that strife and all of that. And that's why you have to choose the harder path, because if you don't choose the harder path, you won't get here. If you keep choosing the easier path, you keep letting this thing that you want go. And that sucks. I think that if we keep choosing the harder path, we build character and trust. Have you noticed that we always respect people? We respect people who have done hard things, in their life, in their journey, in their story, and all of that kind of stuff. We choose them. We always choose them to be the leaders, the group leaders or whatever it is, because they're willing to make the hard choices and they're willing to endure it. They're willing to put in the extra hours. They're willing to be the first one in and the last one out. They're willing to just do what most people are not willing to do. And so what does that tell us? We trust them. We trust those people. And I think when you constantly keep showing yourself that you can do the hard thing, you build trust with yourself. You build trust with yourself to be able to get through things. Trust with yourself that you're able to be disciplined in something. You're able to show up for something if you keep choosing the hard path, if you keep allowing yourself to do the hard thing and stuff like that. I feel like you're building character, you're building integrity and all of that kind of stuff. People that constantly take the easy way out and stuff like that, we don't want to associate with them. We don't want to associate with people that take shortcuts, because people like that are often dishonest. People like that will often cheat you. They will often cut you off or whatever it is. People like that will often leave you under the bus and stuff to succeed because they don't want to take the hard route. And so people don't want to be friends with people like that or work with people like that or associate with people like that, because you can't trust people who always want the easy way out. And often people who take the easy way out often get the least value for what it is they're trying to, achieve and stuff. There's a lot more value in putting in extra time, extra work, or extra effort and all of that kind of stuff in the thing that you want, Very often, if you constantly take the easy way out and shortcuts and stuff, you will settle for whatever crumbs that come out of it, when there's a bigger pot of gold. If you push further, if you're willing to go the distance and all of that kind of stuff. I think that if we are constantly choosing the harder route, we are able to sustain ourselves when unforeseen challenges arise, when things we didn't prepare for come our way. So as I said, life does that. Life will just throw a curveball in your way. And if you are not prepared, if you don't know how to cope, how to survive, how to adjust, how to adapt and all of that kind of stuff, how to push when things are difficult, when the job you thought you were secure in, is all of a sudden not there anymore, when the money you thought you would always have isn't there anymore, when the partner you thought you would always have, isn't there anymore, when the parents you thought you would always have aren't there anymore. What are you going to do if you don't know how to, do the hard thing and push forward? If you don't know how to survive, if you don't know how to fight for yourself, fight for your life, you know what I'm saying? And that's what I need us to get into the culture and the habit of doing, is that when curveballs come, we have a better likelihood and chance of surviving, a better likelihood and chance of getting through it and succeeding also, and thriving, not just getting through by like, by the skin of our teeth, but like, rising like a phoenix out of it. And I think that really comes from building a pattern and a record of being able to do hard things. I think when we start having the conversation about how to do hard things, first and foremost is be consistent. Be consistent in the things that you're doing, because if you're doing it over and over and over and showing up over and over and over again, what you're doing is building a discipline, right? That routine is building a discipline of showing up, a discipline of being there, a discipline of being someone to count on and stuff like that. That consistency makes it easier for you to do hard things, because it's habitual to you to do this thing, because you're just like, another thing is also to just stop complaining. I think complaining makes it so much difficult. Makes the hard thing even more difficult. When you just stop complaining, like a lot of adulting, I remember thinking about this years ago, a lot of adulting is just doing the hard things, and not complaining about it, because the hard things are going to be there still. They're not going anywhere. We have to pay the bills. You have to pay rent. You have to show up for this. You have to go see a doctor when you get sick. You have to get medicated. You just have to do that thing, instead of constantly putting it off, making excuses, this and this and that. The responsibility is on you. So you can complain about it forever and ever and ever, or you can just get it done and move past it. It's going to make doing the hard things a lot less difficult. I think if you keep a contract with yourself, it's going to make it so much easier to do the hard things. If I say that this is my accountability journal, and I'm tracking if I'm showing up for this and this and this and this, if I, have signed off on myself that this is the way that I expect to perform and all of that kind of stuff, I think it will push you to do the hard thing, because it's a contract. It's a contract with the one person you really shouldn't be letting down, and it's yourself, And I think it'll help you, make your brain make the decisions that are beneficial towards the contract. If you don't keep a contract with yourself, you don't feel like you owe yourself anything. You don't feel like there is something that you need to show up for, and it will make it a lot easier to not choose the hard thing, to kind of just let it go and kind of abandon in that way. I think you need to be surrounded by people who choose the hard thing in their life. You need to have a partner that will always choose the hard route, because oh man, it's so easy being, say for example, an unfaithful partner, to be untrustworthy, to be a partner that lies, to be a partner that just jeopardizes things and all of that kind of stuff. But when you're someone who shows up even when it's difficult, even when the relationship is, is hitting a tough wall and stuff, but you still show up, you still support, you're still honest, you're still faithful, you're still loyal, you're still this. That is the hard thing to do, right? When things aren't easy in life, when things in your personal life aren't going so great, but you're choosing to still show up for this partner that you chose, right? For this relationship that you chose. That is the hard thing. And you want someone like that, because that is integrity. That's what I spoke about earlier. These are the people we can put our trust in. You need friends who are willing to put themselves in a position that is inconvenient for them so they can show up for you. That is the hard decision to make. But because they are your friend, they are willing to be inconvenienced so that they can be there for you. Inconvenienced so that they can show up, so that they can be a friend to you. They can be kind and generous and compassionate and empathetic towards you. That is the hard thing. Even if it might not be conducive to them, even when it might not be convenient for them and all that kind of stuff, they are making that choice because they love you, because they care about you. That is a friend. These are people you want. You want a boss who is a leader, who is willing to go the hard route and stuff. You want to work in a work environment with people who are willing to take the hard route to get to the goal that you were all striving for, And if you're working with people who keep wanting to take shortcuts, it's going to bother you. You're going to feel so frustrated because it's just it's not honest, it's not earnest, it's not great, you know what I'm saying? And so if you're surrounded by people who can do hard things, they will champion and support you when you need to make the hard decision, and they will advise you to make the hard decision. You know what I'm saying? When you're caught at a crossroads and you don't know what to do, those are the people who have sound mind, who can genuinely challenge you and equip you with what you need to get to where you want. And that's what you want. I feel like I'm so blessed to be surrounded around people who inspire me, and they inspire me because they just there's no limit to the things that they're doing. I have most of my friends are back in school right now. They are working towards their masters, they're working towards their second, their third, their fourth degrees and all of that kind of stuff. It is insane. They are venturing to things I've never even thought of. They are out of the country. They are just stretching and pushing themselves beyond limitations. And it genuinely pours so much life into me that it makes me want to do more and give more and share more and just work harder, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, you need to be surrounded with people who just inspire you, because when you're driven by so much ambition, you're going to make the choice to choose the harder route. And that's what you need. You need to choose your hard. We've heard that before, right? It's hard to work out, but it's even harder to be unhealthy. It's hard to show up to work every day, but it's even harder to not have the finances that make you feel comfortable in life, that make you live a comfortable life and all of that kind of stuff. It's it's hard to do certain things, but it's even harder, like when I say that it's hard to show up all the time for your friends, for people, all that kind of stuff, for your community. But it's even harder to sit in loneliness. It's even harder to feel alone, to feel left behind, to feel like you have no one. Choose your hard, and I think it'll help you, to do hard things. And I think lastly, write a letter from your future self, right? Say, "Hi Zama, this is future Zama, and right now you are living in I'm just making this up. You're living in a beautiful home overlooking the ocean in this country. You have this many kids or whatever it is. You're really kind of fantasizing and building this life that you're saying, this is what your life looks like. This is what your day looks like. This is what you get to do, all of that kind of stuff. And when you read that letter from your future self, you're going to start making decisions to meet that version of you. You're going to start making decisions that align with that version of you that you're painting out to be, even if it means going the harder route and stuff, and I think that's really, really helpful. It's a powerful imagery, to think about what the future version of you, is doing and living and how, and you know what I'm saying? When you think about what they're doing, you start solving equations for how they're able to do that, how they're able to live this life. It's because of present you making these hard decisions. That's all I really wanted to speak about today is do the hard thing. A lot of us, we're avoiding it. Do the hard thing. As always, I'm sending my love. Goodbye.
What in the 20s is going on?
In the 20s
Think about
here.
the 20s.
What
baby.
What in the 20s is
I am
going
here
on?
for my 20s, baby. This is the 20s.